And we are live. All right. So today we are going to have our first talk about social issues in computer science, really, that you guys are going to have to produce something on. So the first real assignment you guys are going to have is it's going to be on Canvas. Okay. So we've not done anything on this yet, so it's important to kind of go over it. So if you go to Canvas and you go to the CSI 1 class, you'll see there's a tab there called Discussions. And discussions are where you're going to be doing a number of discussions this semester. Okay. And so the first one we're going to do is going to be on corporate censorship. So let me show you, I guess under FERP I can't show you the old ones. But what you're going to do is this. You're going to write a position paper, essentially. You're going to state what your view is on corporate censorship, and we're going to lecture on that first. So if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it yet. And all these directions will be on Canvas. You don't have to memorize it. But what you're going to do is you're basically going to say, this is what I think about corporate censorship, and you have to use the tools of what you've learned so far in this class to argue for a position on it. You're gonna have to say, I think the corporate censorship is okay under these circumstances. I think it's not allowed under these circumstances. This is what I think the law should change to be. And you have to use the rules of critical thinking and argumentation in order to argue a position on this place where computer science and society come together, and in not a very smooth and orderly way. So I'm actually going to do something a little different this semester. I'm actually going to have you guys state what theory of truth you're using for the paper. It doesn't have to be your own theory of truth that you like the best. Just for the paper, I'm using the consensus theory of truth, and I'm using this moral framework, and I'm using a posteriori reasoning or whatever. So all those things we've talked about so far in this class, where you can have a different position on things, you're actually just going to state those up front, because what I found is that it actually makes debates go a lot smoother if you just say, look, I'm a utilitarian. Then somebody has to argue with you on those grounds. They can't say, well, that's not actually wrong because I'm a natural rights person, because then you're not arguing over corporate censorship. You're arguing over the moral framework. So what's going to happen is you're going to write like a one-page position paper. Try to avoid using any fallacies. You'll get marked down if you use fallacies. Write a thesis statement. This is what I believe. And then remember, an argument is a claim supported by evidence. You're going to make a claim like, I believe that we should change Section 230 because X, Y, and Z, and you argue it. It's a claim supported by evidence. You're going to make a claim supported by evidence. Then, after the deadline is over, what you're going to do is you are going to be randomly assigned another student's essay. And in order to be assigned another student's essay, you have to write the essay yourself. So what happens is you have to, by the deadline, right? Every semester I get a student saying, I didn't get anyone. Yeah, if you don't do it by the deadline, then the system does not give you a random person. But what happens is you're given one person in the class who did the assignment, and you have to respond to them. And so what you're going to be looking for when you respond to them is, did they make any fallacies in their argument? Talk about, and this is what I talked about actually on the first day. It's very important for you to use positive criticism. This class is a positive class. We're not here to attack our fellow classmates. We're, last semester on the first assignment, somebody I think was trying to be sarcastic, but they said something along the lines of, nah, dog, here's where you're wrong. You're just wrong all over the place, brah. And I was just like, no, like, don't. Yeah. Sarcasm and humor don't translate very well online, and so use the hamburger method of criticism. Say something you liked about what they wrote. Say something you don't like, and then say something you like. And by don't like, I mean like, hey, this sounds like a fallacy. Hey, This sounds like, it's not clear to me. Are you equivocating here? And then finish with like, but overall, I liked where you're going with this, da 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 da. And so that's called the hamburger model of criticism. Say something you like, say something you don't like, say something you like. So you sandwich any negative criticism in 2 positive statements. Okay? And so you're going to be given 5 points for writing your position paper and 5 points for critiquing somebody else's paper. Okay? And we're going to be doing a few of these. You can see these are the ones we did last year. We did 3, 6, 8 of them last year. This semester, we're probably going to be doing a little less because I've been focusing more on logic this semester based on feedback from the department. Okay. But here's what we're going to be talking about. So any questions about the assignment? We're going to learn what corporate censorship is in just 1 second. So no, don't use any fallacies. Yeah, if you see somebody else using a fallacy, then point it out. Yeah. So when will the assignment be up? It'll be up right after class. I've already. You can see it's there on Canvas. I just need to send it live. Okay. Don't write any fallacies. Yeah. When you're writing your position paper. Okay. You'll have a week to do it. Pretty much all of the assignments I give have a week-long deadline. It seems just easy that way. Should have another Zybooks up as well at some point. Okay, so censorship. So censorship traditionally means the government is impeding speech by the citizens. For example, in Thailand, you cannot criticize the King of Thailand. There is a tradition in monarchies called lèse majesté, which is a legal principle that you cannot say anything that will diminish the majesty of the king. You cannot lessen the majesty of the king. It's called lèse majesté. To a certain extent, the Galileo Affair, you guys all heard of Galileo getting arrested by the Catholic Church. A big part of that was due to Galileo calling the Pope allegedly, probably, a simpleton, right? And he was living in a time where, the Pope had a fair bit of temporal power. And so calling the Pope, who was a friend of his, a simpleton, didn't go over very well with the Catholic Church. And so this is censorship. So when the government, cuts out, words that you can say, that's the legal, definition of censorship. Okay. So when corporations do that, and this is a hot topic, and that's why I wanted to talk about it right now, is because this is a really hot topic in our society, and in this class it's different every semester I teach it because it reflects what is going on in the world. And so when a corporation does it, it's not censorship. Okay. Only when governments do banning words, banning things you can say, is it technically censorship. However, there's something called corporate censorship, which means the corporations are censoring the words that you can say, right? And sometimes in our country it's not illegal. Like if you go onto Facebook and you post coronavirus is caused by 5G, Facebook, there's a pretty good chance that Facebook will censor your post, and it's legal. There is no legal requirement that Facebook allow you to say anything that you want to say. You're using Facebook's platform, and Facebook is a privately held corporation. They are free to censor it however they want. Currently, that may change. There's 11 bills in Congress right now to change that. Okay. Some that want corporations to do more censorship, some that want corporations to do less censorship. So, for example, in Germany, corporations are obligated to remove speech that is indecent, offensive, blasphemous, or anti-constitutional. So, for example, there was a guy who trained his dog to give the Nazi salute, and so YouTube, I believe, had to take the video down of this dog walking like doing this, which, in my opinion, is kind of ridiculous. But that's Germany for you. In Germany, they do not have the same right to free speech that we do here in America. And in China, you're not allowed to show bones and blood and things like that in video games. Germany as well. Germany has anti-gore laws in video games. And so oftentimes video game manufacturers will release a German version and an Australian version and a Chinese version that are censored for whatever specific laws those countries have. So in World of Warcraft, the Forsaken race, which is an undead race, had to be redone because in America they're all like bony and skeletal and stuff like that. And in China, you can't show that. And so they had to redo the entire art design for one of the 8 races in the game at the time. So so as soon as you do, you'll get a peer responses back. So what will happen is on the deadline, then it will push out, it'll randomly assign to you guys a peer review. And I might have it set to give you guys 2 peer reviews, because if the number of people that do it, like what if 10 people write an essay and 7 people do the peer review, you might get a second one. You don't have to do the second one, but if it's getting close to the deadline and the poor person hasn't had anyone to respond to them, you can go ahead and do a second one if you want. You only have to do 1 peer review. Do you read them over or evaluate it? Yes. You will read their position paper, and like I said, you're going to use the hamburger model to critique it. You're looking for, did they use a fallacy? Does the conclusion follow from the argument? Do you start with the premises? You have a conclusion. Do they work successfully from the premises to the conclusion? That's what you're going to be looking for. And the response doesn't need to be long, maybe a paragraph or 2. Okay. So, corporate censorship is legal, and it's still controversial. It's very controversial right now, right? So, Twitter banned Trump, right? So Twitter banned the president of the United States from using its platform, right? That's what I said. It's very controversial right now. There are in America, there's something called Section 230, which is the what do they call it? The 27 words that started the internet, something like that. A little bit of an exaggeration, but what Section 230 means, and you might have heard this term talked about by politicians on both sides of the aisle. What it means is that if you are Facebook, if you run Facebook, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, which you wouldn't be because you're all humans, right? Not androids, but I'm kidding. But if you were Mr. or Mrs. Facebook and you ran Facebook, and somebody posted something on Facebook, you are not considered the publisher, right? Because if you're a newspaper and you publish something, you're responsible for it. So if you are a newspaper and one of your reporters runs a hit piece on somebody and defames somebody, slander, libel, right? You could be sued for it, right? And Facebook and Reddit and Twitter and Google and Amazon reviews, all these people, they have no liability really, right? So if somebody were to go on to Amazon and say this product sucks, I hate it, it's terrible, it ate my children, and it's a complete lie, Amazon is under absolutely no obligation to do anything about it, and if they get sued for that, they can't be sued for it. They have a pretty strong protection under the law against being sued for things that users say, right? So if you're separate, like if they're not an employee, but they're just some user of your site, they're the people making the speech, not you. And there have been a number of lawsuits over the years, and almost all of them have been thrown out. Somebody sued AOL for somebody was doing stock manipulation on AOL, making false claims about the stock. AOL got sued, and the judge threw the lawsuit out, right? Like, Section 230 is very clear. Like, somebody who, if you make a comment on YouTube, you are the publisher, essentially, not YouTube. Okay? And so, this is a very strong protection that internet companies have. And it might change, right? It might change. So to sort of summarize the two different views of the Republicans and Democrats, Democrats want more corporate censorship. Okay, and this is speaking very broadly, right? They want them more heavily involved in censoring speech on the internet. So Facebook should be deleting more posts that are spreading misinformation about COVID-19, is the Democrat position. They should be more heavily involved in deleting hate speech. They should be more heavily involved in fact-checking political speech, right? And Republicans have the opposite view. Well, there's a number of positions, but again, if you're looking at just the bills in Congress right now, both of them are wanting to make changes to Section 230, this shield, right? But just for completely opposite reasons. It's a fairly risky move for a corporation to take these kinds of moves given the amount of controversy. Yeah, sure. I mean, banning the president of the United States was a big deal, right? And Jack Dorsey, I've watched hours of videos by Jack Dorsey and the president of Twitter, right? And I've seen his congressional testimony, like he and Zuck and some other people have been called sometimes repeatedly to Congress, or virtually, because it's all on Zoom these days, and asked, why are you banning this person? Why, are you engaging in viewpoint discrimination, which is, right? It's a thing. Like they've been caught doing this, right? Like Facebook used to say that its news algorithm was completely organic, that the trending news on Facebook was the result of just whatever people are sharing, that'll appear on the trending news in Facebook. And as it turned out, that was a lie, right? That the people working at Facebook were choosing which stories were trending. And so Facebook was actually controlling the narrative of what people in America were talking about, because a lot of people get their news from Facebook. And so if, for example, Facebook chooses to highlight the fact that, we just got, missile striked, right, in Syria, like that's big news, right? But a year ago was big news. This year, almost nothing, right? And a lot of that has to do with is Facebook highlighting it or not on their trending news. And so they've claimed they don't do that anymore. So, it's one of those things. But they were caught lying about it. They did claim it was just completely organic. Whatever people were talking about would be highlighted. But then they actually had a team that was selecting stories to go onto that section, right? And so I actually did an experiment with my students a while back to see did search engines have a political bias in it. And even though the thing says they've been we didn't find it, right? And so we did a study of 5 major search engines, and students could rate hit politically however they wanted. Like, I didn't define what is left wing, what is right wing. I'm just like, search for any hot topic you want: abortion, what was going on at the time, the Bundy Ranch affair, and that might have been a little bit too far away, but whatever news story at the time, and then just see from the top 10 hits, just rate them, left wing, right wing. And we didn't notice, and I mean the class, we gathered hundreds of data points, and didn't find any noticeable difference between Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo or whatever the other search engines are. But overall, it did trend left wing. Is that Google's fault? I don't think so. Just the news media in general, reporters in general tend to be more left wing than right wing. So, yeah. So the hot thing right now is that Facebook and Reddit and Twitter and Google, they're all deleting stuff, right? They're engaging in corporate censorship. And so the question is, is that right? Is it wrong? What should change? I don't know. I don't have any answers for you guys. You know, I'm just a guy sitting in a room, you know, with a couple paintings behind him. Like, I don't have these answers, guys. You know, don't look to me for advice. It's a tough question, right? Like, if somebody is like, I can make an argument for both sides, right? Like, let's say that somebody is posting online that the COVID vaccine has microchips in it, which, by the way, is impossible. I'm a computer science major. I'll at least tell you that much. If they had a computer chip that could run, like, you couldn't even see it, like, holy smokes, dude, that's a huge breakthrough. Like, if they have invisible computer chips that are tiny as dust, like, damn, dude, have you ever seen, like, how big a chip is? Like, they're not that small, you know? And they require power, right? You have to have, like, you know, like a power supply. Like, I've got a Raspberry Pi around here. It's about as small as a computer gets. It's like this big, you know. Like, do you think you can hide a microchip with like a power supply and like Wi-Fi and crap like that? Like in a vaccine? Like, damn, dude, that's the news story, you know, like the miniaturization of that. Nanochips, right? No, it's you know, it's nonsense unless they have alien technology from Area, you know, 51, you know. It's nonsense, you know. But let's say somebody shares a story saying that there are computer chips inside of the vaccines. You can make an argument, and I will make the argument. I you know, part of being educated is that you can argue both ways on an issue. You could argue that this is evil, right? If you're a utilitarian, if you're a consequentialist, if you share a story about there being vaccine microchips, then that will lower the number of people that will get the vaccine. Thus, more people will die. So you are contributing to the death of human beings, contributing to suffering. Because even if people don't die from COVID, there is something called long COVID, where there are long-term effects from coronavirus. A friend of mine has it, and even though he got sick a year ago, he still has tingling in his toes and pain and just all these horrible neurological side effects from having COVID a year ago. He was one of the first persons to get it here in Fresno, and was donating his blood for, you know, a long time because he had antibodies in his system for a long time. And yeah, you don't need a microchip to watch you because you got a cell phone on you, right? Like, your cell phone like does a pretty good job of tracking your location. That's all they cared about. So, if you're a consequentialist, you could argue that this is actively causing harm to human beings. Like, it's going to cause people to die. It's going to cause people to suffer pain and suffering and long, you know, from long COVID. And it's going to cost money, right? Because the more people that get sick, the more of the economic impact we'll have. We'll have to delay shutdowns for longer. You know, hospital bills are obviously very expensive, et cetera, et cetera. So you can make an argument from a consequentialist standpoint that Facebook should censor those posts. Yep. Flip it around. Put a different hat on. Free speech, right? The First Amendment in America, while it only guarantees free speech from the government, right? There is no right to free speech from corporations. Maybe there should be. So, Congress shall pass no law, you know, prohibiting or abridging free speech. But you know, the trouble nowadays is that corporations are the place where speech happens, right? So the back in the day, people would go into a common space and talk to each other, and we had the phone system and the mail network, and those were all neutral. They were all viewpoint neutral. The phone network did not censor you. You know, if you called your mom and said, "Hey, there are these, you know, microchips in the vaccines," like, the phone network didn't cut off your phone line, but Facebook will, right? And Facebook and Reddit and Twitter and these other big tech companies will censor you if they don't like the content of what you're saying. And so they are the common space now for conversations in America, and that is too important. That is too important to allow them to control what speech is being said on it. And so, again, I'm switching hats here. Therefore, we should extend First Amendment protections to speech that takes place on corporate platforms as well. If these corporations want to be protected by Section 230, if they want to have protection, that they are not publishers. They're not involved in the speech on it. They should not be involved in the speech on it. You guys understand? So if they are involved in the speech, if they're saying, no, you can't say that, you can't say that, you can't say that, then they're no longer just neutral, like here's a platform and people are just speaking on it. Now they're actually publishers of the information. And so therefore, if they're involved in censoring discussions on their platforms, they should lose their Section 230 protections as a result. So that would be one example of an argument you can make. And argue your conscience. Don't try to guess what I believe, right? Because I just argued both ways on the matter, and I actually think both sides have a pretty good case to make, right? Like, killing people is a pretty bad thing, right? And free speech is a really important thing as well. And so this is a tough conflict, right? If you're a natural rights person, it's like, what takes priority, the right to free speech or the right to life, right? And you would have to have a conversation about that, right? So they don't lose the protection right now. No, if somebody goes online right now and says, coronavirus is caused by 5G, and Facebook censors it and sends you off to Zuckerberg prison, right? Because that's what happens. One of my friends constantly gets sent to Facebook jail, right? He's not allowed to post for a month, and I can show you what post he posted actually. That got him sent to Facebook jail, and you can tell me if it was worth a month-long ban. Let's see if I can find this. Yeah, but right now, if they do that, there is no consequence for Facebook whatsoever. It is their platform. It's their company. They have a right to free speech as well, right? So one of my friends is an anti-vaxxer, and so she got sent to Facebook jail for that, for criticizing the COVID-19 vaccines. Another friend of mine got sent to Facebook jail for saying, go back to your mom's basement. So he was sent to Facebook jail for 3 days for saying that. Which, while impolite, like, I don't know. Another friend of mine got sent to Facebook jail because the Facebook algorithm could not tell the difference between a male nipple and a female nipple, so it banned him for a month for posting nudity. And then a year earlier, he was out of Facebook jail again. Let's see if I can find the meme that he shared. People, friends, city. Let's see. Posts from my friends. Actual footage of me on my way to Facebook jail. Right? And so, they're... let's see, did he post it? Interesting. I wonder if Facebook's search algorithm won't show an image that gets you sent to Facebook jail. That'd be interesting. So, are they banned? No. Like, none of my friends got kicked off Facebook, because Facebook actually wants to have people on it, right? What happens is that they can't post anything for a month or 3 days. It depends. And so, telling somebody to go back to your mom's basement apparently is a 3-day suspension off Facebook. So, but the point is, they're not neutral, right? They're not neutral platforms, right? They're not a common carrier, is one of the ways of putting it, right? The phone network, it doesn't care what your political beliefs are, right? If you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, you can make a phone call. The phone company isn't listening to what you say and cuts you off if you spread misinformation about something. You know what I mean? But Democrats want this to happen. Democrats have been pushing for Facebook and Reddit and Twitter and Amazon and Google to be more involved in stopping misinformation. They looked at the 2016 election and saw Trump's election as being the result of fake news, right? That's where that term came from. Trump co-opted the term fake news and used it to refer to like CNN. But originally, what fake news meant was people were sharing misinformation on Facebook, right? Like some of them were just outright lies, and some of them were paid for by Russia. The impact of that, I think, was a little bit overstated because Russia took out $40,000 of political ads, which is a drop in the bucket compared to how much a presidential election takes. But yeah, so basically Democrats blame the election of Trump on fake news, on misinformation. And so as a result, naturally, because, political parties care about power, right? As a result, they've been calling for Facebook to not allow misinformation to spread on it so that they could get elected more. One of the problems is, how do you determine what's misinformation, right? That's a big problem. Like, who do you trust enough to censor your information for you? That's a big question, right? Who do you trust to determine what is right and what is wrong, what is factual, what is not factual, right? Like, I once read a story that said that Fox News people were the least factually informed people, right? They did a test. They gave a test to viewers of MSNBC and CNN and ABC and CBS and NBC and Fox, and they wanted to see what they knew about the world. And there's two problems with that. First of all, the different networks cover different topics, right? Like, they have different areas of interest they cover more. And two, one of the questions was, have weapons of mass destruction been found in Iraq? This was 10 years ago or so. And according to the people making the test, the answer was no. Weapons of mass destruction have not been found in Iraq. And they said, see how Fox viewers are misinformed because they think that weapons of mass destruction have been found in Iraq. And the funny thing is, Fox had been running stories before that test about how weapons of mass destruction had been found in Iraq. They found spent sarin gas artillery shells in Iraq. It wasn't the WMDs that George W. Bush was looking for, right? George W. Bush, the pretext was that we were going there to stop him from getting nuclear weapons, and they found none of that, right? But they did find sarin gas left over from the Iran-Iraq War in the early 1980s. And so there, enough that you could kill people, right? And so there were weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq, and Fox News ran that story, and the poll said that anybody who said yes to it was wrong, right? That these people are misinformed. But it was the people who were making the poll that were misinformed because technically WMDs had been found. They didn't specify the right kind of, they didn't specify did they find nuclear weapons. They just said have WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, have they been found in Iraq? And the actual answer was yes, and the people making the poll thought it was misinformation. And they used that data to show how, the people were ignorant when they themselves didn't know it. And that's the point here is, like, who do you trust to determine what is accurate and what is not accurate? You know what I mean? Like, somebody is going to have to put the stamp of God on something saying, like, yes, this is true, this is not true. And who the hell do you trust to do that? You know what I mean? Like, that's a dicey question. So, fake news. Yeah. So fake news is, how do you determine what's fake news, right? Because according to Trump, and I think wrongly in a lot of cases, he would say CNN is fake news, and again, that term was originally used by Democrats to talk about misinformation, mostly on Facebook, that they believed got Trump elected, which I think is a bit of hyperbole and exaggeration, right? And then Trump co-opted the term and used it the other way. So, it's a question. Like, if we are going to censor things based on the content of their posts, who decide? And if you're a libertarian, let's bring in the libertarian standpoint. The libertarian standpoint is that these are corporations. They have a right to control their platforms however they want. Government has no role whatsoever, right? If Facebook wants to delete everybody who posts banana bread recipes, they can do so. If they want to ban people off their platform for posting banana bread recipes, they can do so. It's fine, right? They're a corporation. They have a right to run their corporation however they want. Counterpoint: corporations have terms of service, and if and a terms of service is like if you're a user of our platform, you have to follow these rules. If somebody is following the terms of service, then under what justification can you ban somebody, right? Because in a certain sense, it's a contract that works two ways. And so if somebody is following the rules, and not posting things that are contrary to the Facebook community guideline standards, and I'm going to go over our 11 o'clock deadline today. So if you need to leave, you can leave. That's fine. You can pick up the rest of this later on YouTube. Share recording, you can delete it. Blizzard EA around 100 yen. So I've read the Facebook community terms of service. Okay. And I've seen instances of Facebook deleting people and banning accounts that did not go against the terms of service, right? And to me, like, okay, if that's a contract, then from libertarians, like, you're kind of sucking up to corporations a little too much, right? Like, the terms of service is a bilateral agreement. You can't have a unilateral agreement, right? It's like, if a company gives you frequent flyer points for flying on an airline, they can't just like not do it, right? They can change how their system works, right? But they can't just like arbitrarily take away your frequent flyer points. There's no such thing as a unilateral agreement. And Facebook gets money from you being on the platform. And so they have profited from your relationship. If you write political posts on Facebook, Facebook is monetizing you. That's how Facebook makes its money. Somebody sees your political post saying that I think we should all vote for so-and-so in 2024. They have made money off that, a very small amount of money, but they made money off you. And if that post did not actually violate any of the community terms of service, then they're in the wrong, and there should be some sort of bilateral relationship there, that they should not be able to ban you if you did not actually violate the terms of service, you know what I mean? And so one of the changes to Section 230, actually not at the federal level, the governor of Texas yesterday or the day before or something like that, a couple days ago, Governor Abbott of Texas has proposed a bill, what is it, SB 1, I think, in Texas, that will allow people to sue if Facebook and Reddit, any online platform with 100 million or more users, so basically they're going after big tech, Facebook, Reddit, Amazon, Google, if they are censored based on viewpoint discrimination. So if they censor your post simply because of your viewpoint, not because you actually, said anything illegal, then you can be sued under this proposed Texas law. So that is a proposed change at the state level, not the federal level. Texas SB 1. So let's see if we can find it. Nah, I don't see it. It's probably not SB 1 then, but this was proposed just a couple days ago. And usually read terms and conditions, yeah. And so that's so the libertarian perspective is these are corporations, they can do whatever they want. And then the counter to that is, well, are the terms of service an agreement between two parties or not, right? And if they are, then Facebook certainly doesn't say it's illegal to be a Republican, and they would probably argue that they make no such discrimination against Republicans. But the impact of their rules is that Republicans do get banned more often than Democrats. And so I read a paper on this, and the paper said it's because Republicans engage in more terms of service breaking activities. So there you go, but it's disproportionate impact. So who knows? I don't know. I don't have any answers for you. Okay. So the number of people that think that search engines are unbiased is 73%. The problem is, the top hit on the search, and this is a couple of years old, it might be different now. Like I said, I ran this study myself, which is that if you look at the political bias of the top hits, you can actually graph the political bias of the top hits, right? And so, that's an issue, right? And so who controls the search engines has an enormous impact on our political discourse, right? What topics are coming up? When I pull up Google News here, what stories does it run? Right? Google News has to pick a story for me to see, right? And it's saying right now, GOP Senator Roy Blunt announces he's not going to run for re-election. It thinks that's irrelevant to me. Stimulus check updates. It thinks that's relevant to me. It's not. Biden order can change how colleges handle sex misconduct. All right. Well, I do teach at a college. So are they changing the the Title IX protections again? Yep. Changes to Title IX. Yeah, that was a big change made a couple years ago, which was changing how Title IX violations were handled, or sexual harassment violations were handled at the college level. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there's an entire extrajudicial judicial system for colleges, where colleges are not only required to teach you guys stuff, hopefully you're learning some stuff in this class, but also if there's misconduct, you get to go to college court and have people that have absolutely no legal training weigh in on your future. And so Betsy DeVos made it harder to bring sexual misconduct claims, and also introduced the notion that you have the right to due process even in a college trial. And so depending on your perspective, that's either a good thing or a bad thing, I guess. And so it looks like that's changing back mostly, because Biden's executive orders to date have mostly been about undoing Trump's executive orders, again, for better or for worse. More police, more fencing. Yeah. So basically, this will probably look different if you're not me, right? If you go to Google News, news.google.com, you can see what Google thinks is relevant to you. And this is a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because you have Google controlling the national discourse, right? And so the problem with it is that you have a tech company that is controlling what people are talking about. And that is a pretty massive level of control that, we haven't, I shouldn't say we haven't seen before, because newspapers traditionally have had that power in America, right? The Hearst, has been credited with the Spanish-American War, right? So, after the Maine was blown up in Cuba, newspapers said it was Spain's fault. Spain sabotaged the Maine. Even though that was probably a lie. It was fake news, probably, even back then. I don't think anybody knows for sure, but people are reasonably sure that the Maine was not blown up by Spanish sabotage, but newspapers caused America to go to war. That led to Teddy Kennedy and the Rough Riders charging up San Juan Hill, which led to him becoming famous, which led to him becoming vice president, which led to him becoming president after McKinley died, which led to the So, if you look at the effects of all of these things, they have pretty massive, the whole trust busting. The reason why Standard Oil isn't around anymore, why Ma Bell is not around anymore, is because Teddy Roosevelt became president, and Teddy Roosevelt was very opposed to monopolies. And neither the Republicans nor the Democrats wanted to take on monopolies, for better or for worse. And so Teddy Kennedy used the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up Standard Oil, right? And for better or for worse. You can make an argument that Standard Oil was providing a better product at a lower price, and the government has no right to do it. Again, if you're taking a libertarian perspective. But but that was the result of the newspapers' yellow journalism, right? Fake news has been around for a long time. And so, they're, libertarian again would say, well, Google's a private party. They can adjust the scales however they want, right? So, Google and Facebook add fact checks, right? Like if somebody posts something about COVID, it'll have a little thing under it. Click here to actually get information on it. COVID, if somebody posts something, so-and-so said this, it'll say, nope, said that's not true. If there's an untrustworthy site, then Google downranks it, which means it doesn't appear, or appears on the 5th page where nobody visits anyway. So the Facebook, like I said, was caught curating what's trending, curating what stories people are talking about. So Zuckerberg has actually been accused now of being too conservative, which is probably a reaction to the getting caught, tilting the balance towards Democrats earlier, because and Reddit as well has been accused of being too conservative, because, for example, Reddit banned the Donald, which was Donald Trump's permanent political rally on Reddit, a community of I don't know how many millions of people, and Reddit banned it, right? And just like how Twitter banned Trump, right? This caused a huge political outrage, right? So you're banning the largest conservative community on Reddit. And so Reddit made sure that they banned a number of left-wing groups as well. So like Chapo Trap House was banned as well, And so I've read a number of papers on here where Facebook and Reddit and similar groups are essentially biased towards conservatives, because anytime they do something, in the author's opinion, rightly taking out a conservative group, then they feel like they just kind of need to ban an equal number of left-wing groups, right? So Facebook finally started purging various Antifa groups that were calling for violence against police, especially after the Capitol riots. All of a sudden it wasn't cool anymore, and so they started banning these groups that were calling for violence against police that had been allowed to speak until then. And so there's an argument that has been made that Facebook and Reddit and similar sites are being too right-wing, because they're just sort of banning left-wing stuff as sort of collateral damage to sort of keep the balance even, right? So if we ban 10 million Republicans, we'll just ban 10 million Democrats, even if they didn't deserve it, right? So ideological diversity is what Facebook and Reddit claim they're for. Like they claim they're a place for free speech. They claim they're a place where different voices can be heard as long as they follow the terms of service. And as I said, I've seen cases where people followed the terms of service. I actually looked at the posts. I read all of Facebook's community code of conduct, and I didn't see any violations in there. And you're supposed to get a warning. You're supposed to get a set of warnings. It's supposed to be corrective. If you look at Jack Dorsey and I don't remember his right-hand woman, they talk about the whole point of these moderation activities is supposed to be corrective. It's supposed to help people fix their behavior, not ban. They're not in the interest of banning people, because then they lose users, and their market cap is based on the number of users they have. So, but then there are people that are banned without warning, right? And sometimes Facebook says it was an error, their algorithm didn't work right, and they unban them. But it was clear they don't actually follow their stated terms of service, right? So I just saw your Google News. You feel so informed. Yeah. So it is looking at the memes right now. That's what was the guy's name from Spider-Man? Jameson, the boss of Newspaper Story. If you ever feel useless, think about the guy that writes the terms and conditions. That's amusing.
What?
J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah. Such a great name. So, it's a tough question, and so your job for your homework assignment is to say, what should we do about it? Because I don't have any answers for you guys. I'm sorry. There's really good arguments that could be made from a variety. I'm not even going to say both sides. There's a lot of sides. One side is leave it alone. The current system works. The current system has resulted in the growth of the internet. The Section 230 was made back in 1996, and resulted in the growth of the internet, which is one of the biggest transformative technologies in the history of mankind. If they weren't given that legal shield, we would not have any user-generated content on the internet. There would be no YouTube, because YouTube would be liable for literally everything posted on YouTube, and that's too great a risk, right? There would be no comment sections on newspaper sites, which maybe would be positive. I don't know. If you ever read the comment sections on a page, like yeah, maybe that would be a positive. I don't know. There would be no Reddit. There would be no Facebook. There would be no Twitter. And arguably you might say that's a good thing. Let's do away with Section 230. Yeah, that's a possibility as well. So so examples of corporate censorship. So one really gray area to me that I want to highlight is that the government has pressured corporations to censor people. So if the government censors somebody, that's illegal, right? The government is not allowed to prevent free speech by individuals, right? However, if they just ask, like, hey, this is Joe Lieberman's office, hey, could you cut off payments to WikiLeaks? Then and they do it, like, that's not illegal, right? I don't know. It's a gray area. Just ask. And if all of a sudden Visa and other payment processors, and this is a real dicey issue. Like, it's one thing for like Facebook to like not allow you to post vaccines about transparent computer chips, which don't exist, by the way. Computer girl, no, there's no such thing as a transparent computer chip. But payment processors, there's only a few payment processors in the world. There's PayPal and Visa and MasterCard and probably a few others. If those all get together and decide they don't want to...
Yes, there is.
Payment processors? Cash?
No, there is such a thing as clear. Like, okay, where in the world did anybody ever say that it worked?
Fair enough. You can make one that doesn't work. Good point. Well done. Good job, critical thinking, Pete. So, but if these payment processors get together and just say, nope, you're cut off, like that's the most effective deplatforming there is. You can order DNS service to get cut off as a judge, right? So judge cut off WikiLeaks' domain name so that you can no longer type in WikiLeaks in your URL and it would not take you to the website anymore. And so WikiLeaks, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, has never been actually found guilty of any crime. I could be wrong. It's not something I have looked into. So take it with a grain of salt. But as far as I know, they've never been found guilty of a crime, yet the government pressured them to be killed, right? Because an organization, its lifeblood is money, and they basically choked off their blood supply, and they cut them off the internet, despite, as far as I know, never being found guilty of a crime. This is worrisome. And so this is a much more serious gray area. Because it's like, well, we didn't put you out of business. We're just not letting people find you. It's like saying we're not burning your books. We're just not allowing people to find your books. Right? So, and so Julian Assange hid in the Ecuadorian embassy for years. He was accused of rape in Sweden and took refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy because he claimed that if he was arrested on the rape charges, he would be extradited to America, right? And in fact, after he was booted out of the Ecuadorian embassy, the Brits arrested him, and then America immediately filed to extradite him to America.
Did you order me food for lunch?
There has been no food for lunch. I can do it right now. We're basically done with class. So, yeah.
Do you just
So what your assignment is, I've just tossed a lot of stuff at you. You should probably do your own reading on corporate censorship. You should do your own reading on Section 230. And what you're going to do is you're going to post a thesis. I think this should change. I think this should not change. Whatever your thesis is. And you're going to just write a one-page position paper on this is how the world is right now, and I don't like this part of it, and I think it should change. Okay? Will there be a rubric for the discussion and peer response? Yes. Yeah, it's already written. I'll just post it live after this. And so you'll know exactly what you're going to be graded on. And as long as you follow the bullet points, you will get an A on it. Okay. This is not an English class. I don't, the way I judge essays is, did the student do this? Yes. Okay. Right. Your grammar's got to be pretty bad for me to mark you down on it. Like, if I can't read your words, then, yeah, you're probably going to get a 0 on it or something close to it. Like, it should be legible. If you're not good at the English side of things, get a friend to read it over for you and fix your grammar, fix your spelling. If you make a spelling mistake or a grammar mistake, I generally don't mark people down for those unless it's illegible. Like if I literally can't figure out what you're saying, then yeah, you're not gonna get your good grade on it. So if you have poor English skills, have a friend read it over for you. Okay. The writing assignment is on corporate censorship. Corporate censorship, not censorship. This is a tech class. This is a computer science class. And the big hot thing right now is corporate censorship. You know, Facebook, Twitter censoring Trump. eBay just took down Dr. Seuss. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I'm going to speak for at least a couple minutes on that. So eBay took down 6 books by Dr. Seuss. So Amazon as well. So what happened, this was like just in the last week, what happened was the Dr. Seuss estate, the corporation that manages Dr. Seuss's books, determined that 6 of their books were culturally insensitive and decided to stop publishing them. Again, libertarian perspective, it's their company, they have the right to do it. You know, what are you going to do? Compel them to sell books they don't want to sell? Right? However, that's not really what the news is. What the news is that eBay delisted all copies of To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street because of the content of the book. Right? And so you have Amazon, which pulled all of the copies of those 6 books off their online stores, even if they're, I believe, third-party sites as well, and eBay delisting all of these used copies. So if somebody owns a copy of To Think That I Sold on Mulberry Street, eBay is stopping that person from selling a copy of their book. Right? So it's no longer a matter of, you know, I'm choosing to not sell something. It's a eBay choosing that you can't even sell your copy of the book. And that's a big deal. Right? That's a big deal because eBay allows Mein Kampf to be sold. Right? It allows, I went online, I was searching, I was like, all right, let's see how much racist crap is there on eBay. There's a lot of signed copies of David Duke's, books. You know, he was the Grand Wizard of the KKK, you know, and you can go and buy signed memorabilia for him. There's all sorts of racist crap from the 1920s you can buy on eBay. It's like, damn, dude, like there's a lot of like blatant, horrible crap on eBay, right? But they're censoring To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, right? Which, to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, it's because of the depiction of a Chinese dude. Does it have a picture of it? Does it have a picture of it? No. It's because a guy is, he's got the hat and he's eating a bowl of rice with chopsticks. There it is. Yeah. So, right. So that's why eBay is pulling To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. Right. And I'm not gonna make an opinion on that, but apparently that's worse than literally Hitler, I don't know, and David Duke. Yeah, we're done here. So, that's what's going on right now. You know, you have I will, girl. I will. I'm just wrapping up here. You have Republicans in Congress reading Dr. Seuss, protesting the cancellation of Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss wasn't canceled. 6 books were. Right, and so, you know, is this going to be a new era for eBay? Is eBay going to get involved and censor anything that, they don't approve of now? So that'd be a new developing area of corporate censorship. Because again, eBay, I guess, can do whatever they like under the law. It's just odd. It's just odd to me that picture is causing auctions to get pulled off eBay, but you can literally buy signed copies of, you know, David Duke's books. I don't think it's on the same level, in my opinion. I don't know. Okay, so that's what you guys get to talk about, and it's hot right now, and this is computer science, high tech companies, social issues. This is one of the big 3 things we talk about in this class. So good luck, have fun. I'm going to post the assignment right now as soon as I order some food for my daughter. And you guys will have until next Monday to write that. Okay? All right, see you guys.